A billionaire disguises himself as a homeless man to test humanity, and the only person who helps him is a waitress drowning in poverty. But when he pulls her into his empire as his secret heir, she discovers she wasn't being tested. She was being chosen for a war she never knew existed, a war that could save or destroy millions. The fluorescent lights buzz like dying insects above the cracked vinyl booths, casting their sickly glow over another graveyard shift at the poorest diner in the city. It's 2:47 a.m., and the smell of burnt coffee and broken dreams hangs thick in the air. $28.63. That's what 6 hours of smile through the pain service has earned tonight, and it's not even enough to cover the late fee on this month's electricity bill. The coins clink against the Formica counter as tired hands count them for the third time, hoping somehow the math will change, knowing it never does. The phone screen glows with another notification, another red number, another reminder that the medical bills don't care about double shifts or aching feet, or the fact that sleep is a luxury reserved for people who don't have 16-year-old brothers fighting for their lives in hospital beds. The chemotherapy costs more per session than most people earn in a month, and insurance, that beautiful fiction, covers just enough to keep you hoping while it slowly bleeds you dry. This is what poverty looks like at 2:47 a.m. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind. The quiet, grinding kind that wears you down one shift at a time until you can't remember what it felt like to not be exhausted. The bell above the door chimes, and every head in the diner turns. The rain has brought in something the late-night regulars recognize immediately: trouble. The man stumbling through the entrance looks like he's been living in those clothes for weeks. His coat, once probably expensive, now hangs in tatters. His beard is wild and unkempt, and his eyes carry that hollow look of someone who's been walking too long with nowhere to go. The smell hits a second later: wet concrete, stale sweat, and the particular odor of someone who's been sleeping rough. The businessman in booth 3 immediately signals for his check. The couple by the window shift uncomfortably, whispering to each other. Even the cook, visible through the kitchen window, shakes his head and reaches for the phone. The manager emerges from the back office with that look, the one that says this person doesn't belong here, doesn't fit the image, needs to be removed before paying customers get uncomfortable. But something makes the waitress move first. Maybe it's the way the man's hands shake as he reaches for the counter to steady himself. Maybe it's the flash of something in his eyes, not desperation but resignation. Like he's used to this reception, like he already knows how this scene ends. Maybe it's just that when you've spent enough time on the edge yourself, you recognize the view. The manager's voice cuts through the tension. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a family establishment." Family establishment. That's what they call places that judge you by your appearance. That's the phrase they use when they mean not for people like you. The man doesn't argue. He just nods slightly, already turning back toward the rain, toward another night of nothing. "Wait." The word comes out before wisdom can stop it. "He's with me. I'll take care of it." The manager's face twists into something between anger and disbelief. "You paying for him?" "Because that's coming out of your wages if he runs." $28.63. The electricity bill will have to wait another day. "Put it on my tab." The man sits in the corner booth, moving slowly like every joint hurts. Up close, there are details that don't quite fit the image. His fingernails, despite the grime, are neatly trimmed. There's a pale line around his wrist where an expensive watch used to be. His shoes, though caked in mud, are quality leather. But nobody else is looking close enough to notice these things. They just see homeless, see problem, see threat. The menu slides across the table. "Order whatever you want." He studies it for a long moment, then points to the most basic item: eggs, toast, coffee. $6.95. He could have ordered the steak. He could have taken advantage of unexpected kindness the way people do when they've been desperate long enough. But he chooses the cheapest thing on the menu. The food arrives, and he eats slowly, methodically, like someone savoring something they haven't had in a while, not wolfing it down, not rushing, just eating with a strange kind of dignity that seems out of place in those tattered clothes. The diner has gone back to ignoring him, back to their own late-night routines, already forgetting the man in the corner exists. Everyone deserves dignity. The words come out quietly, not really meant for him to hear, just a reminder to a weary soul in a fluorescent-lit diner at 3 a.m. that kindness still matters, even when it costs something you can't afford. He looks up then, really looks for the first time. His eyes are sharp, intelligent, completely at odds with the image he presents. He doesn't say thank you, doesn't offer explanation or story or the usual transactional gratitude. He just holds that gaze for 3 seconds that feel like they stretch into something bigger, like this moment matters in ways that won't make sense until later. Then he finishes his coffee, stands slowly, and walks out the door into the rain without a single word. The bell chimes, the door closes, and just like that, it's 3:15 a.m. and there's a diner full of people who've already forgotten he existed. The shift ends at 6. The walk home takes 40 minutes because the bus costs $3, and that might be needed for something more important tomorrow. The apartment building looks worse in the gray pre-dawn light. Peeling paint and broken promises stacked 7 stories high. The key sticks in the lock the way it always does. Inside, the younger brother is asleep on the couch, too sick to make it to the bedroom, wrapped in blankets that can't quite fight off the chill of a barely heated apartment. His head is wrapped in a bandana, hiding the hair he's already lost. His face is pale in a way that has nothing to do with the early hour, and everything to do with the poison they pump into his veins twice a week to keep him alive. This is the price of survival. This is what you sacrifice for the people you love. 3 part-time jobs, no health insurance, nursing school dreams, gathering dust on a shelf next to books that can't be afforded anymore. This is the mathematics of poverty. No matter how hard you work, the numbers never quite add up. 2 days pass in the usual blur of exhaustion and barely keeping ahead of disaster. Then the phone rings with a number that doesn't make sense. A professional voice, polished and certain, asking, no, insisting, that there's an urgent matter requiring immediate attention at the downtown office of one of the largest corporations in the city, a company that builds skyscrapers and moves billions and exists in a world so far removed from greasy diners and overdue bills that it might as well be another planet. There must be some mistake. I've never applied to your company. There's no mistake. A car will be sent. This afternoon. The matter is urgent. The line goes dead before questions can form proper shapes. The address gleams on the phone screen, the kind of building you see from the freeway, all glass and steel and power, the kind of place where people wear suits that cost more than 3 months of rent. The closet offers exactly one outfit that might pass for professional, a thrift store skirt suit that almost fits, a blouse with a stain carefully hidden under the jacket. Shoes that pinch but look acceptable from a distance. This is the armor of the almost presentable. The costume of someone trying to look like they belong in rooms where they absolutely don't. The car arrives exactly on time, black, expensive, silent as a shark. The driver doesn't make small talk. The city passes by the tinted windows, transitioning from the neighborhoods where people struggle to the districts where people succeed, from check-cashing stores to boutique coffee shops, from survival to luxury in the span of 15 minutes that might as well be 15 light years. The building towers above everything else, casting its shadow across entire city blocks. The lobby is all marble and implicit threat, the kind of space designed to make visitors feel small. Security guards with earpieces, turnstiles that probably cost more than a year's salary, people in tailored suits moving with the confidence of those who've never wondered if they can afford groceries. The elevator rides up in silence, climbing past floor after floor of concentrated wealth and power. The numbers tick higher, past the regular offices, past middle management, past senior vice presidents, all the way to the top floor where the air itself feels more expensive. Executive territory, the realm of people who make decisions that affect thousands of lives without ever seeing the faces attached. The doors open to a corridor of windows and intimidation, assistants at desks that could double as modern art installations, closed doors hiding the machinery of high-stakes business, and at the end of the hall, the corner office with the view that overlooks the entire city, looking down on all those tiny, struggling lives from a height where problems seem manageable and poverty looks almost picturesque. The massive desk sits before floor-to-ceiling windows, and behind it, in a suit that probably costs more than 6 months of rent, sits the man from the diner. Clean-shaven, hair perfectly styled, the tattered coat replaced by tailored wool, those same intelligent eyes, but now framed by the unmistakable authority of someone who owns everything in sight. The transformation is so complete it almost seems impossible, except for those eyes, which carry the same sharp assessment they held over $6 eggs at 3 a.m. in a failing diner. This is the moment where the floor drops out, where reality tilts sideways, where a simple act of kindness reveals itself to be something else entirely, a test, a game, a manipulation by someone with the resources to play with people's lives like pieces on a chessboard. His voice, when it comes, carries the weight of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. Thank you for coming. We have much to discuss. Outside those windows, the city sprawls in miniature. Millions of lives, millions of struggles, all of them visible from up here, where the air is thin and the rules are different. And somewhere down there, in a cramped apartment with overdue bills and a sick brother sleeping on the couch, a life waits in suspended animation, not knowing that everything is about to change. But here's the question that should make your blood run cold. When a billionaire tests humanity by pretending to be powerless, and you're the only one who passed, what exactly have you won? And more importantly, what's the real price of being the chosen one? Because kindness, it turns out, can be the most expensive currency of all. Here's what the ultra-wealthy don't tell you about power. It's not about having everything. It's about being able to see who people really are when they think you're nothing. The man behind the desk doesn't smile, doesn't apologize for the deception, doesn't acknowledge the shock currently short-circuiting every logical thought. He simply speaks with the casual authority of someone who's used to being obeyed. For 20 years, he's been conducting an experiment. Once every few months, he abandons the suits and the security detail and the trappings of wealth, dresses like society's invisible, and walks among the people who would bow and scrape if they knew his name. He sits in their restaurants, rides their buses, sleeps on their benches, and he watches. He watches how they treat the powerless, how they look through the homeless like they're ghosts, how they protect their comfortable spaces from the contamination of poverty, how easily kindness dies when there's no benefit to keeping it alive. In 2 decades of testing humanity, 20 years of deliberate degradation, hundreds of encounters across dozens of cities, exactly one person has ever helped him without hesitation, without recognition, without wanting something in return. One person looked at a man society had discarded and saw someone worthy of dignity. And that person is standing in this office right now, wearing a thrift store suit and the expression of someone who's just realized they've been playing a game they didn't know existed. The anger comes hot and immediate. So, this was all theater? People's compassion is entertainment for you? You play dress up with poverty while actual people are drowning in it? The words come out sharp, edged with the particular fury of someone who's been judged their whole life, and just discovered they were being judged again, just in a different costume. But he doesn't flinch, doesn't defend, just opens a folder on that massive desk and slides it forward. Inside is an offer that makes the room tilt, a position as executive assistant, a salary with 6 figures that seem like a typo, benefits that include full medical coverage for family members, immediate access to the kind of health care that doesn't make you choose between treatment and rent, between survival and bankruptcy, between hope and surrender. This is what desperation looks like when it's gift-wrapped in opportunity. This is the moment when pride wars with necessity, when principles collide with the reality of a brother who needs treatment that costs more per month than most people earn in a year. The words that should come, take your job and your test and your manipulation and get out of my life, they die in the throat Because on the other side of this city, a 16-year-old is sleeping on a couch wrapped in blankets that can't quite keep him warm, fighting a disease that doesn't care about dignity or deserve or the rightness of refusing blood money. What would you do? When the devil offers salvation, when the price of your principles is measured in someone else's life, when the choice isn't between right and wrong but between bad and worse, what would you do? The acceptance tastes like surrender and survival in equal measure. Within 48 hours, the world transforms. The cramped apartment becomes a luxury high-rise with actual heat and windows that close properly and a view that doesn't include dumpsters. The thrift store wardrobe is replaced by designer labels that feel like costumes. The brother gets transferred to a private hospital where the halls smell like money instead of disinfectant, where doctors actually have time to explain things, where cutting-edge treatment is measured in hope instead of desperation. This is what the other side looks like. The side where problems get solved with phone calls, where comfort is assumed, where the machinery of poverty that ground you down for years simply ceases to exist. But nothing is free, especially not salvation. The job is relentless. 18-hour days learning the architecture of wealth, how deals get made, how power flows, how decisions in air-conditioned boardrooms ripple out to affect thousands of lives that will never see these halls. Every task is a test. Every assignment carries the weight of evaluation. File this contract. But did you notice the clause that would hurt workers? Schedule this meeting. But did you recognize it? Conflicts with the environmental review? Approve this expense. But did you question whether it serves the company or just inflates executive compensation? He's still testing. The homeless costume is gone, but the examination continues, just in a different form. And slowly, through those exhausting weeks of trials disguised as job duties, a pattern emerges. The man behind the desk isn't just a billionaire playing games with people's ethics. He's a ghost haunting his own empire, searching for something he lost and can't name. The late nights in the office reveal what press releases and quarterly reports never show. The personal photos are few and fading. A wedding picture from decades ago. A daughter's graduation he clearly wasn't present for based on the professional photographer's composition. His wife died 5 years ago from an illness that gave her 6 months warning. 6 months he spent on a merger that seemed world-changing at the time, but now feels like trading away the only thing that ever really mattered. The daughter lives across town, running a nonprofit with a budget smaller than his daily interest earnings, and they haven't spoken in 3 years because she sees him as a monument to everything wrong with a system that creates billionaires while children go hungry. The texts on his phone tell the real story. Messages sent and never answered. Birthday wishes that go unacknowledged. An entire conversation thread of one-sided apologies to a daughter who stopped reading them years ago. He built an empire that employs 40,000 people, that moves billions through the economy, that has his name on buildings across 3 continents, and he lives alone in a penthouse that echoes with the sound of his own footsteps, surrounded by the trophies of a victory that cost him everyone who ever loved him. The homeless tests aren't about finding good people. They're about finding proof that goodness still exists in a world he's helped make cruel. They're about searching for evidence that somewhere in the machine he built, in the system he perpetuates, in the hierarchy he enforces, there's still a human being who remembers that other human beings matter. And now that he's found that person, the real test begins. The education happens in layers, each one revealing more about the infrastructure of extreme wealth. The board meetings where decisions get made that will affect thousands of families, discussed in the abstract language of quarterly projections and market positioning. The closed-door sessions where executives casually suggest layoffs that will devastate communities because it improves the bottom line by 2%. The negotiations where lawyers discuss human labor like it's just another commodity to be optimized, where the people doing the actual work are reduced to line items called human capital expenditure. This is what power looks like from the inside. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, but the banal, bureaucratic kind that destroys lives with PowerPoint presentations and projected growth metrics. And threading through all of it is the growing realization that the man orchestrating this education isn't preparing an assistant. He's preparing a revolutionary. 3 months into this strange apprenticeship, the discovery happens by accident. A folder left open on the desk during a rare bathroom break, medical records glimpsed while delivering quarterly reports, hushed phone calls to specialists whose names appear in news articles about experimental treatments for the untreatable. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. Metastasized, inoperable. The kind of diagnosis that comes with timelines measured in months, not years. 6 months, maybe 8 if the experimental immunotherapy works, maybe less if his body rejects the treatment the way it's starting to reject everything else. The board doesn't know, the shareholders don't know, the 40,000 employees whose livelihoods depend on confidence in leadership don't know. The empire continues operating on momentum and the assumption of immortality, while the man at its center slowly dies in silent increments, hiding his decline behind carefully tailored suits and strategic camera angles and the kind of heavy makeup that reads as healthy on video calls. The confrontation happens late on a Thursday, when the office is empty except for the cleaning crew and the ghosts of deals past. I know about the cancer. 5 words that crack open the facade he's been maintaining. And instead of denial or deflection or the corporate doublespeak that's become second nature, he just nods. Slowly. Like he's been waiting for someone to finally see through the performance. What comes next reframes everything. He's not looking for an assistant. He's not even really looking for a successor in the traditional sense. He's looking for someone to commit corporate heresy, someone who will take this machine built for profit extraction and transform it into something that actually serves the people it touches. Someone who will redirect the billions toward housing and healthcare and education instead of stock buybacks and executive compensation. Someone who has the character to wield obscene power without being corrupted by it, because they remember what it's like to choose between electricity and groceries, between medicine and rent, between survival and surrender. And he's chosen someone who served eggs in a graveyard shift diner to inherit an empire worth more than some country's GDP. The insanity of it sits between them like a third presence. I'm not qualified for this. I don't have a business degree. I don't understand derivative markets or hostile takeovers or any of the things you need to run a corporation. The protest comes out desperate because the weight of it is crushing. The responsibility, the impossibility, the sheer audacity of thinking someone who was counting tips 3 months ago could possibly navigate the shark-infested waters of billion-dollar corporate warfare. His response cuts through the panic with surgical precision. Qualifications can be taught. Harvard offers an executive MBA that takes 18 months. I can hire consultants who understand derivative markets better than anyone alive. What I can't teach, what consultants can't provide, what business school doesn't offer, is the ability to look at a system rigged in your favor and choose to change it anyway. I've met 10,000 qualified people. I've spent 20 years searching for one good one. Do you understand how rare you are? But goodness isn't enough when the wolves are circling. And they are circling. The deputy chairman has been consolidating power for months, sensing weakness, preparing for succession. He's been buying board loyalty with promises of higher returns and fewer ethical constraints. He's been cultivating relationships with the largest shareholders, the institutional investors who care about quarterly performance and nothing else. And he's been gathering evidence, proof that the new executive assistant is wildly unqualified, documentation of the staged homeless encounter, testimony from the diner manager about the night in question, a narrative that frames the whole situation as the delusional sentimentality of a dying man making emotional decisions instead of rational ones. The trap is already built. The moment the cancer diagnosis goes public, the moment weakness becomes visible, the coup will trigger. The board will vote for new leadership. The company will pivot back to pure profit maximization, and everything, the planned transformation, the hope for redemption, the possibility of an empire being wielded for good instead of greed, all of it will die with the man who dreamed it, unless there's a move nobody's anticipating, unless there's a card still unplayed. The estranged daughter becomes that card, though she doesn't know it yet. The meeting happens in secret, in her cramped, non-profit office in a neighborhood that tech gentrification hasn't reached yet. surrounded by evidence of good being done with resources that wouldn't cover her father's monthly wine budget. She's brilliant in the way people are when passion drives them, articulate about systemic injustice in the way only someone who's studied it deeply can be, and she carries her anger at her father like a badge of honor. She explains why she cut him off with the kind of clarity that comes from years of therapy and self-examination. He was never there, not for school plays or graduations or the thousand small moments that build a relationship. When her mother got sick, really sick, he was in Singapore negotiating a merger. When her mother died, he flew back for the funeral and left immediately after for London because there was a deal that couldn't wait. He chose the empire over the family every single time until there was no family left to choose. And here's what she doesn't know. What makes this conversation feel like watching a tragedy unfold in slow motion? Her father is dying too. Stage 4, cancer eating him from the inside, while he tries desperately to build something that might justify the cost of building it. And the woman sitting across from his daughter in this tiny office, this former waitress turned unlikely heir, is the bridge between a father seeking redemption and a daughter who deserves answers. But bridges can be burned from both ends, and someone is about to light a match. The betrayal arrives via email at 11 p.m. on a Friday, marked urgent, sent to every board member simultaneously. The deputy chairman has made his move. Inside the email is everything: the full documentation of the homeless test, the video footage from the diner, the financial records showing the massive compensation package for someone with no qualifications, the medical records that were supposed to be confidential but apparently aren't when you have enough money and enough motivation to find them. And at the bottom, in language carefully crafted by lawyers who specialize in corporate warfare, a formal motion to remove the CEO on grounds of impaired judgment and fiduciary irresponsibility. The board meeting is scheduled for Monday morning. Emergency session. Mandatory attendance. The kind of gathering where empires change hands and careers end, and the only question is how bloody the transition will be. But here's what the deputy chairman doesn't know, what his research and his spies and his carefully cultivated sources haven't revealed. The dying CEO has been preparing for this moment. For months, he's been documenting everything, every bribe to a board member, every ethical violation swept under the rug, every instance of the deputy chairman choosing profit over people, legality over morality, personal gain over corporate responsibility. A file of evidence so comprehensive and damning that releasing it would trigger federal investigations and shareholder lawsuits and the kind of corporate scandal that destroys more than just one career. Mutually assured destruction. The nuclear option and the decision of whether to use it now falls to someone who was serving eggs in a diner 4 months ago. The weekend passes in a blur of strategy sessions and worst-case scenarios and the growing realization that there's no clean way out of this. Use the evidence and win the battle, but become exactly the kind of person who weaponizes information for power. Don't use it and lose everything. The company, the transformation, the chance at redemption, all of it consumed by people who will strip the empire for parts and maximize profit while the world burns. Both choices taste like poison. Both paths lead through darkness. And the clock is ticking down toward Monday morning when 40,000 employees will wake up not knowing their futures are being decided by people who've never walked their floors or learned their names or considered for 1 second what happens to them when efficiency metrics demand sacrifice. But what if there's a third option? What if the game everyone thinks they're playing isn't the actual game at all? What if the dying billionaire and the unqualified successor and the estranged daughter aren't separate pieces but parts of a larger strategy that nobody's seen yet? Monday morning arrives like an execution date, and everyone involved is about to discover that kindness, when it's been tested and refined and backed by the resources of an empire, can be the most devastating weapon of all. So here's the question that will determine everything. When you're holding a weapon that can destroy your enemies but also destroy who you are, do you pull the trigger? Monday morning breaks cold and unforgiving over the city, and the boardroom on the 47th floor fills with men in suits who've made careers out of reading rooms and calculating odds. The deputy chairman sits at the far end of the table, confident in his coup. Surrounded by board members he's spent months cultivating with promises of returns, unencumbered by ethics. The dying CEO takes his seat at the head, thinner than he was months ago, the suit hanging slightly loose in ways only people paying attention would notice. And standing near the door, holding a folder that could end careers and trigger federal investigations, is someone who 4 months ago was deciding between paying rent or buying groceries. The motion is read. The accusations laid out with the clinical precision of lawyers who bill by the minute. Impaired judgment, fiduciary irresponsibility, the hiring of an unqualified assistant based on sentiment rather than merit. The argument is airtight, the evidence comprehensive, the outcome seemingly inevitable. The deputy chairman is already composing his first email as acting CEO when something unexpected happens. The former waitress steps forward and asks to speak. The room goes silent with the particular quiet that comes from powerful people not used to being interrupted. She opens the folder, and for one terrible moment, everyone thinks they know what's coming. The counter-evidence, the documented corruption, the mutually assured destruction that will burn everything down. But instead, she closes it again, sets it on the table, and begins to tell a different story entirely. She talks about the night in the diner. Not the version the deputy chairman investigated, but the human version. The version about a woman so tired she could barely stand, choosing to sacrifice money she desperately needed because someone else needed dignity more. She talks about the brother fighting cancer in a hospital bed, about the mathematics of poverty that never quite add up, about the choice between principles and survival that people with money never have to make. She talks about discovering the test, feeling manipulated, being offered salvation wrapped in suspicion. And then she does something nobody expects. She admits she's unqualified. She tells the board exactly what they already believe. She has no business degree, no corporate experience beyond 4 months, no traditional preparation for leadership at this level. By every conventional metric, every standard measure of qualification, every criterion these men use to evaluate worth, she should not be in this room. But then she asks them a question that reframes everything. When was the last time any of them actually created value? When was the last time they built something with their hands, served someone with genuine care, sacrificed their own comfort for another person's dignity? When was the last time they saw the people their decisions affect as actual human beings rather than line items on a spreadsheet? The room shifts. Not dramatically, not obviously, but something changes in the air, in the posture of board members who came prepared to vote one way and are now not quite sure. And then she plays the card nobody saw coming. She tells them about the daughter. The CEO's estranged daughter, who runs a nonprofit with a fraction of a percent of her father's wealth and does more measurable good than his entire corporate empire. The daughter who cut off her father, not because she's unreasonable, but because she's right, because he chose the company over the family, the empire over the people, profit over presence. The daughter who represents everything this company could be if it actually cared about the communities it operates in rather than just extracting value from them. And then comes the revelation that stops the coup in its tracks. The daughter is here. She enters the boardroom like a challenge, like an accusation made flesh, and she doesn't come alone. She brings representatives from the communities this company operates in. Workers from the factories, families affected by corporate decisions made in rooms like this one, people whose faces the board has never seen, whose names they've never learned, whose lives they've affected without ever considering the human cost. And she brings documentation of her own, not corruption evidence, but impact assessments showing what this company could accomplish if it measured success by lives improved rather than just profits maximized. The CEO stands then, weaker than he was, but steady in a way that has nothing to do with physical strength, and he makes his final case. Not a defense, not an argument, a confession. He admits he built this empire wrong. He admits he prioritized growth over good, profit over people, quarterly returns over long-term human welfare. He admits he lost his wife and his daughter and his own humanity in the pursuit of wealth that at the end means absolutely nothing because there's no one left to share it with. And then he presents his succession plan. Not just the former waitress as CEO, not just his daughter running a foundation, but a complete transformation of corporate structure, worker representation on the board, profit sharing that actually shares profits with the people who create them, environmental commitments with teeth, community investment that's measured and accountable, a fundamental redesign of what it means to be a successful company in a world that's burning while billionaires argue about quarterly projections. The deputy chairman makes his countermove, calls for the vote he spent months arranging, confident in the loyalty he purchased. But loyalty bought with promises of profit has a way of evaporating when there's a better offer on the table. One by one, bored. Members who were supposed to vote for the coup start asking questions instead about the transformation plan, about the measurable impact, about what it might mean to be part of a company that's remembered for more than just making shareholders wealthy. The tide turns not dramatically, but inevitably, like watching ice melt, slow at first, then all at once. The vote fails, the coup collapses, and the deputy chairman learns the hard way that in a game of mutually assured destruction, the person willing to transform rather than destroy always has the advantage. 6 months pass in the way time does when everything is changing. The CEO's health declines as predicted, but he's present for the transformation in ways he never was for his family. He walks the factory floors, meets the workers, learns their names and their stories and the human cost of decisions he made from 47 floors above their lives. He reconciles with his daughter not through grand gestures, but through showing up, day after day, for the unglamorous work of actually caring about the impact of his empire. And when he dies, it's not in a penthouse surrounded by emptiness, but in a hospital room with his daughter holding one hand and his unlikely successor holding the other, both of them crying for a man who found redemption in his final chapter. The funeral draws thousands, not because he was wealthy, but because in his final months he was present, not because he built an empire, but because he transformed it, not because he was powerful, but because he used that power to serve rather than dominate. The press writes obituaries about corporate transformation and ethical leadership and the billionaire who died trying to fix what he'd broken. But the people in the neighborhoods his company operates in remember something simpler. He was the rich man who finally saw them as human. And now, the woman who served him eggs in a diner at 3 a.m. sits in the corner office with the view that overlooks the entire city, terrified and determined in equal measure. The company is transformed, but fragile. The board is convinced, but watchful. The employees are hopeful, but skeptical. And the question becomes whether compassion can survive at scale, whether kindness can become policy, whether someone who remembers what it's like to have nothing can wield everything without losing themselves. On the desk sits a framed photograph from the diner security camera, that moment at 3 a.m. when kindness happened without audience or reward. Beneath it, a note in handwriting that's become familiar, words written in the final weeks of a life spent searching for redemption. You didn't save a billionaire. You saved the father I should have been, and the company I should have built. Thank you for reminding me that wealth isn't what we own, it's what we give. The future is yours now. Make it count. The first initiative launches the following month. Community centers in every neighborhood the company operates in, offering job training and health care and meals to anyone who needs them. Not charity, investment, not handouts, dignity. And in the window of the first center, on opening day, there's someone who looks lost, someone society has taught us to ignore, someone who might be testing humanity or might just need help. And in this new world being built one choice at a time, it doesn't matter which. The former CEO, the current leader of something that's slowly becoming more than just a company, walks out and extends her hand. Come inside. Everyone deserves dignity. The cycle of compassion continues, rippling outward in ways that can't be measured in quarterly reports, but might just change everything. Now here's what I need you to do. This story asks a question that applies to your life right now. When was the last time you chose kindness when it cost you something? Not the easy kindness that feels good and requires nothing. The hard kind. The kind that inconveniences you. The kind that makes you late or costs you money or requires you to see someone society tells you to ignore. Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me about a time you helped someone when you didn't have to. Or tell me why this story made you think differently about wealth and power and what success actually means. And if you believe that compassion is more powerful than profit, that character matters more than credentials, that the way we treat people when we have nothing to gain reveals who we really are, then subscribe and share this story, because we need more voices saying that kindness isn't weakness and wealth should serve rather than dominate. The algorithm rewards engagement, so let's engage with something that actually matters. Comment, subscribe, share, and then go out and prove that the world this story imagines is the world we can build together, one choice at a time.